A Japanese slugger could be the answer for the Philadelphia Phillies' third base problems. But how much is he going to cost when he's posted? We'll take a look at Munetaka Murakami on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the Locked On Podcast Network is now the #1 sports podcast network. So thank you so much to everybody who's made that happen. Locked On Phillies is your #1 place for daily Monday through Friday Philadelphia Phillies content. You might know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for over 6 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So the Phillies have a need at third base, potentially. They need power. We know that for sure. If Alex Bohm is moved, Alex Bregman seems to be the only true option at third base that would make an impact, right? Like for the level of what the Phillies are looking to do. He's the big price free agent at third base. Unless you believe that a new slugger being posted out of Japan could be the difference maker. We're going to talk about Munetaka Murakami to lead off today's episode. Next, we're going to look at a local guy. The guy I played with growing up, actually, believe it or not, that is going to be a free agent. Maybe if the Phillies want to take a heavy swing at starting pitching, could Zac Gallen be a guy that ends up coming back to the Philadelphia area? And then we'll take a look at a recent article by Jeff Passan, ESPN's Jeff Passan, put out the perfect move for all Major League Baseball teams this offseason in free agency. What did he write for the Phillies? It'll play in today's episode a lot. Let's start with Munetaka Murakami, though, because the chances that you've ever seen this guy play or know anything about this guy really are pretty low because he's been playing over in Japan. He's never played Major League Baseball. He is a 25-year-old third baseman, can also play first base, so a corner infielder. He bats left-handed, so you would not get right-handed pop. So already it's another lefty power hitter. But he's a guy that people project out to have legitimate power at the major league level. He's in kind of this weird spot, though, because he's not this superstar like a Shohei Ohtani or Yoshinobu Yamamoto, like that level of player coming out. He's a really good player, but the contract range for him is all over the place based on projections. So you could be looking at a situation where if you don't want to splurge on Alex Bregman, you do want to move on from Alec Bohm, and you need a third baseman that creates more pop in this lineup, Murakami could be a guy that you look at. And also at age 25, it would be much more likely that he gets a long-term deal that plays out positively for whoever signs him than a guy like Bregman, who, I mean, listen, I like Alex Bregman. I think he has some good years ahead of him still, but he's not a guy that's truly in his prime or like going into his prime at age 31. You got a guy 6 years younger that's available. You give him a 6-year contract, and he finishes that out at the age that Bregman is now. So let's talk about who Murakami is as a baseball player. Something that's concerning to a lot of teams is he's had some injury issues in his time playing in the Nippon Professional Baseball League. This year, he had an issue with arthroscopic elbow surgery, so an elbow injury. He also had an oblique injury. But on top of that, he hit 24 bombs in 69 games. That's pretty darn good. That's almost a home run every other game if you round up a little bit there for Murakami. Alec Bohm isn't doing that. And I don't know if that transfers to the major league level to say this guy's going to hit 45 bombs, but could he get to the 25 to 30 range? I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility. He also slashed 286, 392, and 659. So he hit for some average as well. The quality of pitching is going to be much better that he sees at the major league level. So I don't think he's going to hit 280 with 30 bombs, but could he be 250 with 20, 22, 24? I think that's a realistic range for him. The problem with Murakami is not only is he a left-handed bat, which the Phillies would like to see a righty to level out their power balance, he's also not great defensively, which means for where Alec Bohm is right now, you're either staying the same or taking a step back defensively, and he's not a Gold Glove candidate at third base. You're not going to confuse Alec Bohm with Nolan Arenado defensively, Manny Machado defensively anytime soon. So you'd potentially take a step back in one area and a step up in another, which is sometimes the trade-off you've got to take. But let's run through our free agent rankings and like how we evaluate them, which again is the fit, the cost, and the realistic chance that they end up in Philly. The fit for Murakami is medium, like mid-level fit, because you do have a guy that currently plays that position in Alec Bohm, who is under team control, that unless the Phillies are actively shopping Alec Bohm, which we did see last year. Last offseason, they tried that. So it's a realistic possibility that they do it again. But right now, he's on the team. So it's not like Bohm's gone in free agency. You have an opening at that position. He's a medium fit. And that also takes a hit because of the left-handed bat. You want a righty. Bregman's a righty. He seems to make a lot more sense at that position than Murakami. Just the age and the contract range is going to be different. The cost for this one, I don't know. You tell me. Let me read you something from The Athletic because they had some salary comps for Murakami. And Freddie Freeman, 6 years, $162 million, is on here. Matt Olson, 8 years, $168 million. So 2 more years, $6 million more dollars, like much less AAV on that one. Paul Goldschmidt, 5 years, $130 million. Edwin Encarnacion, 1 year, $20 million. And Carlos Santana, 3 years, $60 million. Josh Bell, 2 years, $32 million. So we've got a range of 1 year to 8 years, and $20 million a year maybe is the range, maybe a little bit more than that. It doesn't seem like anybody knows. So he's not going to be cheap, but I'm going to put his cost. He's going to be the first player that we talk about where the cost is a mid-level cost, because I do think that if you get him on like a 4 or 5 year deal, you could be looking at around the 110 to 120 range for a 5 year contract. Which breaks down to what, like 20 million and change a year, 22, 24 million. You know, I'm not a math guy, but $1 million for every home run I think that he could potentially hit at the major league level per year. Not a bad deal. Not a bad deal at all. So mid-level costs, mid-level fit, realistic chance. I probably have to put him low again, only because of the left-handed bat thing. And we talked about with Imai, the pitcher being posted out of Japan, how it's tough to win the favor of these Japanese players coming out if you don't already have a Japanese star or have had one, or you're not a West Coast team, right? They have their preferences and they can go anywhere they'd like. So it would be tough for the Phillies to win this bidding war against some other teams that could need a young lefty third baseman and have a need at that position. So the realistic chance for him is low. But the reason I like him in situationally more than Alex Bregman is this guy could be a longer term piece for the franchise that you won't have to pay into his years like 36, 37, and 38 season. Like this is a pre-prime baseball player where Alex Bregman, you could argue, is a post-prime baseball player, or at least getting to that point of his career. And for a lot of people, the number one fear for the Philadelphia Phillies offseason is that they continue to double down on old players. This would be a guy that rewrites that narrative. It would be tough to get him, obviously, and it doesn't seem like he's fully in play for the Philadelphia Phillies, but something about having a free agent at the age of 25 is a very intriguing possibility that only really happens when these players are posted out of Japan, because they are not held to the same Major League Baseball service time requirements as guys that are playing in minors or majors over here in the United States. It's an interesting opportunity. You would add power at the hot corner. Alec Bohm has not been able to do that, so it would be a major difference. But Bregman could do that for you, and he's a righty. Murakami being a lefty puts him in a tough spot for how he fits into this Phillies lineup, because let's say it's Turner, Harper, Schwarber again, or Turner, Schwarber, Harper again, however you want to set up the lineup. And we talked about protecting Bryce Harper in our most recent episode, so you can go back and check that out if you'd like to hear my thoughts on that. Adding another lefty power bat into the mix, where's your righty power come from in this lineup? It feels like you're back to kind of where you were, and you just get, I don't know what, a better offensive version of Max Kepler, but still the matchup. And that's not fair to him, but you understand what I'm saying. That was the thought of who Kepler could be when the Phillies signed him this past offseason. You just don't have enough variance in the lineup, in my opinion. But 25-year-old, sign me up. If he's available and you need a guy at third base, I would not say no to Munetaka Murakami. I just wonder if Bregman is the better option. We might talk about that a little bit more when we talk about Jeff Passan's work for ESPN and the article that he put out. But coming up next, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to go to pitching, because Zac Gallen is a free agent. He did not end up getting moved at the trade deadline this year when a lot of people thought Arizona was going to move on from him. And that's a good sign for where his market's at if you're looking to potentially get a deal. Because if people thought he was going to be a hot commodity, or I should say a very hot commodity, they probably would have tried to trade for him and then re-sign him in-house. But did not trade for him, did not move from Arizona. Now you wonder, where's the market at for a pitcher like Zac Gallen? We'll talk about his incredible upside, but where he realistically is as a pitcher right now as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about game time first, though, because, man, there are some great sporting events going on right now with the NFL season hitting crunch time. There's nothing better than being in the stadium, surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It can be super frustrating. And that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee, which means you're always going to get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. The Eagles have a monster matchup. They won on Monday Night Football against the Green Bay Packers. They're now 7-2, top of the conference, and they're facing the red-hot Detroit Lions at Lincoln Financial Field. Sunday Night Football. Call out of work Monday and then get on Game Time and get yourself some tickets. That's going to be one of the biggest games of the year for the Eagles, and arguably their biggest home game remaining. And if you want the best possible deal and the best ticket buying experience, you got to go through Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. And download Game Time today. Let's dive a little deeper into this Zac Gallen situation. Who is he? Why does he fit? And I know you know who Zac Gallen is if you followed baseball, but who is he at this point in his career? Because there was a point where this guy was in a Cy Young conversation, and this past year, not exactly a banner year for Zac Gallen. Let's just be realistic. He was 14-6, 3.65 ERA. That's not terrible, right? But it's not where he was. He was the starting pitcher in the National League All-Star game 2 years ago, which honestly I forgot about until I was checking out this Athletic article. Bad on me, but when Major League Baseball stopped selecting Phillies to the All-Star game, as they did this year, it leads you being kind of a little annoyed by it. Anyway, so Zac Gallen has this great upside, but he just had kind of a down year. And maybe that's why the market wasn't as hot as expected for him at the trade deadline. Maybe the Arizona Diamondbacks were a little bit cautious to move off him, thinking that, hey, we keep him for the rest of this year. We try and re-sign him. We want him here for the long term. You shop him, then a player gets uncomfortable, and they're more likely to leave you in free agency. That could be the thought process. Or it could have just been teams didn't want to pay the asking price of his ceiling, seeing who he was in the moment. But the Phillies, as I've told you, could be in the market for a right-handed starting pitcher because there's so much uncertainty with what Andrew Painter is going to be at the major league level. He had a down year in the minors this past year. Who is Aaron Nola at this point in his career? Did not have a good season for the Phillies. Looked better at the end. Solid 2 innings in the postseason, but I'm not banking on Aaron Nola being a top-level guy. And Zack Wheeler, who knows? He's got that scary TOS going on with his shoulder and the blood clot situation, the thoracic outlet syndrome. He's just in a spot where you can't really project Zack Wheeler to be anything for this Phillies rotation. Like, do I think he's going to be healthy at some point next year? Yes. Do I think he's going to be a good pitcher still? Yes. Can I say that with certainty right now? No. These are all thoughts and conjecture, and it's a really scary. It's not just, hey, he had a shoulder strain and he just rehabs and he'll be back. This is something more significant. So right-hand pitching is not the strength of the Philadelphia Phillies rotation. You got a good lefty in Sanchez. Well, a great lefty in Sanchez. A great lefty in Jesus Luzardo. You could lose Ranger Suarez, and then the rest of your rotation could be made up of Nola, Taijuan Walker, Andrew Painter, Zack Wheeler, some combination of those guys. But there are fair questions about all 4 of your potential right-handed starting pitchers, which is why I think the fit for Zac Gallen here in Philadelphia would be high. He's only 30 years old, and pitchers have a long enough lifespan that you could give him a multi-year deal. He's a Scott Boras guy, so I'll just go ahead and tell you the cost is going to be high as well. He's going to get paid. The contract prediction for him is 5 years, $135 million, according to The Athletic. So that's going to be an expensive deal, but I'd imagine it's probably less than what Ranger Suarez gets, considering Ranger Suarez has been consistently better, even though he has the injury concerns. The Phillies are not listed on the best team fits here, even though I do think that if you're reading the tea leaves, or at least if you have questions about the right-handed starting pitching here, you're going to realize quickly that the Phillies could use a long-term solution. Like right now, if you just look at the names and say Wheeler, Nola, throw Taijuan Walker in there, Andrew Painter, a top pitching prospect and 2 guys that have been in Cy Young conversations in their career. You say you got plenty of right-handed pitching, but when you realize the questions facing those guys, that is when Zac Gallen starts to make a lot of sense. And then you look at the realistic probability, and I will tell you, again, I don't think the Phillies are committing a long-term deal to another pitcher this offseason. I think that would be a 2027 offseason, labor negotiations and lockout notwithstanding. Once Zack Wheeler hits the point in his career where you say, okay, we're about to lose this guy. And you know what Andrew Painter is a little bit more. And you get another year of data on on Aaron Nola. And Taijuan Walker's contract comes off the books. So right-handed starting pitching might be more of a next year problem. So the realistic probability is low only because starting pitching was not the Philadelphia Phillies issue at all. It was the strongest part of the equation this past year. Doesn't mean you just neglect it and roll it back another year and hope you get the same thing. You got to constantly be adjusting to who your rotation is now. And I like Zac Gallen's stuff. I like his makeup. He is a local kid. Went to Bishop Eustace over in Jersey, played Tri-State Arsenal with yours truly. He played with myself and my younger brother growing up with that Tri-State Arsenal organization. So I played baseball with Zach. Well, it was only like one summer, but known about the kid for years before he was at the major league level. And part of that, the familial nature of like, hey, I know this guy. He's from here. He knows how Northeast fan bases operate. It'd be cool to have him back here in Philadelphia. Like that would be an awesome story for him. Does make me want it a little bit, but the real thought process of going out and paying for one of the top starting pitchers on the market, it doesn't seem to fit with what the Philadelphia Phillies offseason strategy is pointed towards. Now, should it? Only time will tell. But the Phillies seem content to gamble on Zack Wheeler, Andrew Painter, Aaron Nola, Taijuan Walker, that contingency of 4 right-handed starting pitchers working out this year rather than committing a bunch of money to reworking that now. So Zac Gallen, an interesting name. Not one that I think ends up in Philadelphia, but one that if the Phillies decide that they want to do like the Jesus Luzardo move, and this is why we're going through these starting pitchers. Because last year I would have told you there's no way they're trading for a high-level starting pitcher. And they went out there and did it anyway. So maybe Dave Dombrowski is seeing what I'm seeing with the questions about his righties. We'll see when free agency really heats up. Again, a reminder about free agency. It's going to take some time, folks. We still haven't had any big-time news as far as signings are concerned around Major League Baseball. So that's something that will take time to kind of flesh out. So a couple of interesting names there in free agency, and I gave you my evaluation. But Jeff Passan, who does great work, covering Major League Baseball for ESPN, put out his perfect acquisition for all Major League teams, including your Philadelphia Phillies. And it's a guy that we've already mentioned on today's episode. So we will talk to you about what Jeff Passan had to say. I'll read you his little excerpt from the article of why this is the perfect acquisition. And I'm going to go a little back and forth with Jeff Passan's thinking as well, because part of me agrees, part of me disagrees with some of the things that he says about the Phillies' potential perfect offseason move. Let's talk about FanDuel real quick, though, because the NBA is rolling along early part of the season here, and there's no better time to get in on the action because the books, they're still trying to figure out who these teams are. FanDuel is trying to decide, where do I set these lines? I don't know if the Sixers are good or not yet. They have some good nights. They have some bad nights. They play Boston tonight. Who knows? They've split one game apiece so far this year between them and the Celtics. A lot of stuff's up in the air. So if you think you know, let's get in on the action. The official sports betting partner of the NBA would love for you to play with them. And even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It's not just basketball. Of course, they've got football, hockey, college football, college basketball. I mean, a lot of great sports going on right now. The fall is always a great time of the sports calendar, and playing with FanDuel keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's read this from Jeff Passan because he put out, again, a really interesting article. And Jeff is as connected as anybody in baseball right now to what's going on with various free agency situations, teams' thought processes, the kind of heartbeat of the league. And if you want to know the heartbeat of the Philadelphia Phillies, you should become part of our Everydayers Club and subscribe to Locked On Phillies on YouTube. Hitting that subscribe button, if you're watching us on YouTube right now, will get you notifications when new episodes are posted so you never miss any of our great content or breaking news. It's free and easy to subscribe. All it's going to do is make sure Locked On Phillies shows up in your algorithm and that you know when we post new episodes. So it helps you out and it helps us out. And if you can't watch us on YouTube, you can just listen to the podcast. It is still just a normal podcast as well, and we're available wherever you get your podcast. But there's nothing normal about Locked On Phillies when it comes to your Phillies content. We're the only ones out here doing this 5 times a week through this part of the off season. So join us and be part of our Everydayers Club. I appreciate everyone who already has. Here's the blurb from Jeff Passan on ESPN.com on what the Phillies' perfect move could be. The Phillies have a minuscule needle to thread as they try to transition from the recent incarnation of excellence, but no championship, to a new generation. I think that's totally fair. It's a tough offseason. Do you continue to get older and stick with this is me kind of ad-libbing here. Do you continue to get older and stick with the current core of this Phillies team that hasn't gotten over the hump? Or do you break down a division-winning back-to-back team and go, hey, 2 postseason series outweigh everything you did in the regular season? I know where the fan base is leaning right now. Continuing with Jeff's write-up. And while re-signing Kyle Schwarber is clearly a priority, plenty of other teams will be in that market too because of the shorter-term deal he'll command. The Phillies don't need to skimp, though. They need an impact bat for the middle of the lineup and an impact person to lead the next generation. That's an important part of this. Considering the work he did in Boston this past season, one player checks all the boxes and offers precisely what the Phillies could use in every regard. Sign, free agent, third baseman, Alex Bregman. Here's where I agree with Jeff Passan. Impact person to lead the next generation. To me, that means kind of like a switch up of the vibe, the culture of the team. I don't think the Phillies have a bad culture. I just don't think it's working to the level that they need it to. And that means you got to go overboard and you got to bring in another guy who's been a winner in his career. And Alex Bregman has been a winner. He's a culture setter. He's a guy that comes into a locker room and says, yo, this is how we do things. This is how you win. Let's do it. Like, let's get after this the right way as consummate professionals. And maybe that's hard conversations. Kyle Schwarber's a guy who's been here for a couple of years, right? He's already had his impact on the clubhouse. If you lose him, that'd be a big loss. But if he stays, it's not a change of culture bringing back Kyle Schwarber. It would be a change bringing in another voice, another thinker like Alex Bregman, who's seen a lot of baseball. So I totally agree with that part. Impact bat in the middle of the lineup. Whew. Jeff, from your lips to God's ears, the Phillies, for the love of God, need a right-handed power bat, and Alex Bregman might be the one that fits the best, considering that Alec Boehm has not been that power bat at third base. Third base is a power position. Like, it makes too much sense if you move off of Boehm to bring in a player with the profile of Alex Bregman, right? You turn a guy who's a contact, can be an RBI guy type of hitter in Alec Boehm to a guy that can hit the ball out of the yard, can field the position well, and is also a solid average hitter who's been doing this for a long time. Like, the amount of pop that Alex Bregman has compared to Alec Boehm would be a noticeable difference in the middle of the lineup. And he would be a guy that could potentially hit behind Bryce Harper to level out this lineup. That way, that conversation we had about protecting Bryce Harper, that goes out the window with Bregman hitting behind him at cleanup. Or you can bat Bregman second behind Trea Turner, Harper third, Schwarber cleanup, and then you have protection there. But I'd rather have both Schwarber and Harper protected, which is why I think Bregman at cleanup would make the most sense if he becomes a Philadelphia Philly. Here's where I don't necessarily agree. The Phillies don't need to skimp. Well, we know that Dave Dombrowski has already talked about keeping the payroll essentially where it was last year. Nothing about what the Phillies are saying is telling me that they're going to go out and add an impact player, like a star player, on top of also re-signing Kyle Schwarber. It still very much feels to me like it's one or the other. Either Schwarber comes back and you find fringe pieces, or you don't re-sign Schwarber because someone steals him away from you, and then you pivot to another star. It doesn't seem like they're going to do both. At least that's my gut feeling. They could shock the world. And that would be ideal because that would be them essentially saying, you know what? We are going to commit even more resources to trying to win because even our hefty commitment to payroll so far has not paid off. That would be a huge check in the pro column for John Middleton, the owner of the Philadelphia Phillies, and his desire to win. I know he wants to win. This is the offseason where we find out how bad John Middleton wants to win. The other thing that I don't really agree with is the checks all boxes and offers precisely what the Phillies could use in every regard with Bregman, because I will just go back to the age conversation. At 31, going out there and signing him to a long-term deal, it does, again, put a lot more pressure on this current iteration of the Philadelphia Phillies. You can't try and get younger at the same time as signing Alex Bregman to a 5, 6, 7-year deal. That's counterintuitive because then you're going to putz around and try to figure out if Otto Kemp's a guy or Andrew Painter's a guy or Justin Crawford's a guy or Aiden Miller's a guy. And the next thing you know, okay, it's 2-3 years in. We might have found a guy or two. We might have found some young players in guys' minor league systems and bring them in. But Bregman's now 35, and he's on the back end of his career at his deal, and you don't maximize the window. It's very risky to have that much on the back end of a contract when a guy's in his mid to late 30s, when you already have Schwarber potentially heading for that with a new deal, Romuto potentially heading for that with a new deal, Harper and Turner are already locked into that with their current deals, Aaron Nola locked into that with his current deal. So that's the one drawback of Bregman. If this dude was 28, he'd be perfect. But unfortunately, he's not. So would you splurge on another aging player like Alex Bregman? Or would you want to see the Philadelphia Phillies try something younger like a Munetaka Murakami, who we talked about earlier in today's episode? You can let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how excited you would be if Alex Bregman became a Philadelphia Philly. But that's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out. I appreciate it very much. And I will talk to you tomorrow on our next episode.